When you're building on a budget, everything feels heavier. You can't endlessly experiment. Here's the shift. If you don't have money, you compete on precision. So let's dive a little deep into it. If you're launching a new business, what you're essentially solving for predominantly is trust. If people trust your brand, then they buy from you. If they don't trust you, they will never buy from you. If you're looking to start a business in a very crowded and saturated market where the entry to barrier is low, for example, if you're starting a clothing or a t-shirt brand, the barrier to entry is low because there are so many factories that can produce a custom design as per your preference. For a business like that, where you don't have an inherent USP, then you cannot be playing just on quality because everyone else is also just talking about quality. So how you stand out is you have to first figure out how to gain trust. Trust is gained through eyeballs. Purely figure out distribution. People buy from people they know about. That's the first barrier to entry. Stop whatever you're doing. Pick up the camera, start creating content because that's the lever one that we can optimize for. In 2026, this is very relevant. When founders create their own content, they share their journey, then people tend to trust the brand even further. Why are you different than others who are doing the same thing? Who are you directly trying to communicate and what are you communicating to them? So if you can address these key pointers in your content, then automatically your brand also gets positioned in a similar way. You have to position it right and the positioning needs to stand out. An example of positioning your brand right in a competitive market would be Liquid Death. Liquid Death was essentially just water, but how they packaged and positioned their brand was very different. They were looking nothing like any water brand in the market. So it stood out to a specific niche and a specific audience, which is why they're so famous. Also, if you're in a saturated market, you can't really rely on ads because there'll be a lot of players who are already optimized for ads. People who are paying more money to Meta and Google and all these ad platforms. So you can't really compete with them because they keep changing their creatives as soon as an ad is failing. So in any case, ads cannot be a base that you build your brand on. It needs to be organic content so that you get regular sales continuously, and ads can be a lever when you have to do festive campaigns or something special is coming up or you need newer distribution. That is the time when you leverage ads. The second category is if you actually have a USP. If your brand is actually solving for an important problem in the world and you know clearly that you have a very clear USP, then the entire positioning needs to be around that. In this category, if you're starting on a smaller budget, then the suggestion would be to niche down as much as possible. Don't build this brand for everyone in the world. First, build it for the first 100 customers. That is your level of optimization, how it should be. Instead of saying that we are building a new innerwear brand, you would say we're building a shapewear brand that helps women to feel free with their bodies. And then you'll go into specifics that we're targeting Gen Z women, or we are targeting working women, or we are targeting women in their 40s. So it'll be very specific, it'll be very niche. In that case, the positioning will also play a role where you're defining it for the end consumers. Okay, this is how our product is unique and this is what we are doing different than others. What this does is this reduces the friction. People don't need to imagine who is this for. You are essentially spelling it out. This is for you. Less friction means lower customer acquisition cost. So you make your product, you first validate it with your friends of friends, not your direct friends, because they might simply say that we love your product. So you reach out to friends of friends in your network, you talk to people directly, you take their feedback, you iterate your product to a level where all these 100 customers are super satisfied and they actually feel, oh, this is something unique. Once you have that, then you make a lot of content on your USP and then you start creating your organic content again, because organic content is the real growth lever in this case as well. Once you have the validation, once you have put your brand out there, then you start running your ads. We actually have built a business this way, where we started with very small budget, took a lot of client feedback because we did have a clear USP in mind. and the product also recently got acquired by someone else. And just to summarize all of this, if you're looking to build a brand in a small budget, then trust is what you're essentially solving for. And there are essentially two kinds of businesses that you might be starting. One could be a brand that is in a saturated market where you don't have a very direct USP, you're just playing on positioning and branding. In that case, position yourself very differently than anyone else and create a lot of founder-led content. Based upon the amount that you have raised in your pre-orders, you can then decide if you want to go with a freelancer, agency, do it yourself. That's something that you can decide. In the second category, when your business actually has a very strong USP, then just focus on the first 100 consumers, talk to people very directly, get a lot of feedback, and iterate your product at least 3 or 4 times when you receive feedback. Once you have a hero product, once you have a very strong USP of your brand, then you create a lot of content on that USP and you put it out there in the world. In this case, my suggestion would be don't hire anyone external. Try to keep it as budget friendly as possible. You can use a tool like Canva to create a type-based logo. Again, you can use GPT, Gemini, and any AI tool to come up with a strong positioning. If you want to build a website, you can use a tool like Lovable to create a simple, straightforward looking website, or just use Shopify and a template. Just launch your e-commerce or your brand out there. And if you're looking to understand how you build a brand, and if you are doing it yourself using Canva and Lovable and AI tools, then we have a complete documentary on how to build a brand. That documentary could give you a complete structure on how you can do it yourself rather than hiring anyone else. Remember, if you're on a budget, every penny matters. So try to do as many things as possible yourself. Do not hire anyone else before you can produce content yourself, before you can figure out your complete production yourself, and before you can do the basics of branding yourself.